In the stillness of a desert night, where the stars hung like silent witnesses over the barren lands of Basra, a child was born not into comfort, nor into royalty, but into suffering. And yet, her soul would one day be adorned with the light of sainthood. It was the 8th century, during the time of the Umayyad Caliphate. The world was shaking under the weight of its own corruption, where wealth flowed into palaces, while the poor drank only from the wells of grief. In a simple home, poor even by the standards of the poor, a man named Ismail cradled his newborn, a daughter. She was the 4th child in the family, and so they named her Rabia, meaning the 4th. There were no midwives, no fragrant oils, no warm linens to welcome her, only the cold breath of night and a father's whispered prayers. Her mother, pale and weakened by hunger, managed to smile faintly as she laid eyes on her daughter. "She is like the moon," she said softly, "but one that has descended upon a sea of sorrow." Little did they know that this fragile child would become a sun for the hearts, burning away the veils of heedlessness and illuminating the path of divine love. But the world was not kind to Rabia's family. Her father was a righteous man who lived in simplicity and trust in Allah. One night, after offering his nightly prayers, he saw a dream. In it, the messenger of Allah, peace be upon him, appeared to him, radiant and majestic. The Prophet said, "Your daughter is beloved by Allah. Take good care of her. One day her tears will extinguish the fires of many hearts." He awoke trembling, weeping in sujood before his Lord, his heart flooded with awe. "Ya Rab," he cried, "I have nothing to offer her, not a coin of gold, nor the safety of a rich home. I am a beggar. How will I guard a jewel?" But Allah was watching over Rabia. Though her family would be struck by famine and tragedy, her soul was already sealed in divine favor. Not long after her birth, her father passed away, followed by her mother. Rabia, still a child, was separated from her sisters in the chaos that followed. In a world that devoured orphans and sold the innocent for coins, Rabia was taken by slavers. She was sold into bondage for only a few silver pieces. But little did the world know, it was not a slave they had purchased, but a lover of Allah, one whose name would echo in the chambers of mystics for centuries to come. She was cast into a cruel life of servitude. Her days were spent fetching water, scrubbing floors, enduring beatings and carrying burdens far beyond her strength. But Rabia never complained. She did not rebel. She endured with the silence of the night sky, holding deep within her heart a secret that none could steal, a yearning for the divine that no whip could silence. Often, when her masters were asleep, Rabia would slip away in the quiet of the night and stand in prayer. There, beneath the open heavens, her feet would bleed on the sand as she stood for hours, whispering the names of Allah with tears streaming down her cheeks. Even in chains, she was free in spirit, for her heart was already flying toward the beloved. One night, she fell into a deep prostration and prayed, "O Allah, I am yours. Whether in hardship or in ease, in chains or in freedom, I belong only to you. If you will it, place me in fire. If you will it, drown me in seas. But never let me forget you, not for a breath, not for a blink." And Allah, in His mercy, heard her. That night her master awoke to a strange light glowing from the room where Rabia was kept. Fearing a fire, he rushed in, but saw her standing in prayer, her face luminous, her eyes lifted to the sky, and an aura of divine light enveloping her. He fell to his knees in shock. "This is no ordinary girl," he whispered. "This is a friend of Allah." He freed her the next morning, begging her forgiveness. But Rabia sought no revenge, no compensation. She simply thanked Allah for His mercy and left quietly, disappearing into the alleys of Basra like a shadow at dawn. From that moment on, she became a wanderer, not of lands, but of the soul. She had no home, no protector, no family, yet she was never alone. For the one she loved walked beside her, guided her steps, and fed her soul with a sustenance richer than bread and sweeter than honey, the remembrance of Allah. And so began the journey of Rabia al-Adawiyya, the queen of Sufism, the one who would teach the world that love for Allah must be pure, without fear of hell or hope for paradise. Her love was for Allah alone, not for reward, not for safety, but because He is worthy of love. In a world of chains, she became a saint. In a time of war, she preached peace. In a society that reduced women to silence, she sang poetry that moved the heavens. Her heart became a garden where the fragrance of divine nearness never ceased. She was Rabia, and this is her story. After her release from bondage, Rabia al-Adawiyya wandered the streets of Basra barefoot, wrapped in only a coarse white woolen robe, her head uncovered beneath the burning sun, her feet cut from thorns and gravel. Yet she never asked for shelter nor extended a hand for food. Her trust in Allah was not the trust of the lips, it was carved into her bones, alive in every heartbeat. Though she owned nothing, she walked with the poise of one who had been chosen by heaven itself. In those early years, the people of Basra could not understand her. To some, she was a madwoman, a beggar who mumbled prayers into the wind. To others, she was an enigma, silent, radiant, content. But to those with awakened hearts, she was a mystery too sacred to name. They would see her walking through the alleys at night, her lips moving in silent dhikr, her eyes lifted to the heavens as if conversing with someone unseen, someone so beloved that the world around her dissolved in comparison. Rabia lived in the outskirts of the city, in a modest hut made of reeds and clay. No lock guarded her door, for she had nothing to protect. The room was bare, except for a small mat for prayer, a clay bowl for water, and a lamp that barely stayed lit. Yet that small, quiet space would become a sanctuary visited by saints, scholars, and seekers. For what was emptiness to the world was, to Rabia, fullness with Allah. In her solitude, she cultivated the most delicate of all human faculties, the heart's capacity to love the divine, not for gain, not for reward, but out of pure yearning. She wept often, not from pain or loss, but from longing. Her nights were spent in prayer and her days in remembrance. She did not speak much, but when she did, her words struck deep, not because of their cleverness, but because they emerged from a heart that had tasted truth. One day a man came to her hut, a scholar known in Basra for his wisdom. He approached her humbly, knowing of her fame among the hidden saints. "Ya Rabia," he said gently, "do you not feel lonely, living in isolation?" She looked up from her prayer mat, her eyes reflecting the depth of her nights. "How can I be lonely," she said, "when he is with me? Am I ever alone when the one I love never leaves my side?" The scholar lowered his gaze, ashamed. He had studied books all his life, but she had studied the silence between breaths, the stillness of the soul in surrender. She needed no parchment, no ink, for her heart was the page upon which Allah wrote the secrets of love. Rabia's character was shaped not by what she gained in life, but by what she let go of. She released everything: comfort, security, reputation. She gave up even her desire for paradise and her fear of hell. To her, these were distractions from the only truth that mattered: Allah Himself. "I do not seek refuge in you from the fire," she once prayed, "nor do I ask you for the gardens of paradise. All I desire is you. Wherever you are, there let me be." People were struck by such devotion. Even the most pious struggled to comprehend it, for how could one love so deeply, so purely, without asking for reward? But Rabia's soul had traveled beyond the veil of self-interest. She did not love as mortals love. She loved as angels might, if angels knew the ache of longing, and yet she was not without emotion. She wept in sujood with the weeping of one who had seen her own helplessness before the majesty of her Lord. She smiled rarely, but when she did, it carried a gentleness that melted the hearts of the hardest men. Children were drawn to her presence. Animals seemed unafraid near her. Her silence taught more than sermons. Her tears baptized hearts. One morning, after a long night of prayer, Rabia emerged from her dwelling to see a group of people gathered near her door. Among them was a man named Hasan al-Basri, the great scholar and mystic. He had heard of her devotion and had come to witness it for himself. When their eyes met, he greeted her with respect, saying, "O Rabia, I have fasted, prayed, and made dhikr all my life, yet my heart is restless. Tell me, how did you find such peace?" Rabia replied, "You fast for fear of hell and you pray in hope of paradise. But the slave who works for wages is not free. Free is the one who loves without fear or hope, who is content only with the beloved." Her words pierced him like an arrow. He fell silent, humbled, for he saw in her what he had not yet tasted, a love stripped of every desire except the desire for nearness. Another time, someone asked her why she had rejected the world so completely. She answered, "The world is a veil, and I do not wish to place a veil between myself and my beloved." Even those who disbelieved in sainthood could not deny the power of her words. She spoke as though she had stood before the throne of Allah and returned with burning eyes. Her worship was not performative. It was elemental, like the sun rising because it must. Her love was not chosen. It was etched into her soul. Rabia had no teacher except her suffering, no mentor but her Lord. Through every trial, every insult, every empty night, she turned only to Allah. She trusted in Him as a child clings to its mother, but with the maturity of one who had seen that even pain was a mercy. Her love did not make her fragile. On the contrary, it made her firm as a mountain. When suitors came, including wealthy men and learned sheikhs, she refused them all. "I have no room in my heart for another," she said simply. "The one who created love is enough for me." Thus, she grew without a father to protect her, without a husband to shelter her, without wealth to ease her way. Yet she walked with the strength of certainty, with the humility of one who knows that her breath is a gift and her tears are seen by the divine. Her fame spread not by her design, but because light cannot hide itself. Even in seclusion, people found her. Even in silence, her voice was heard. She did not speak to attract followers, but to reflect the flame that burned within her, a flame of divine love that needed no wood, no air, no match. It was lit by longing and kept alive by submission. Those who sat in her company did not leave with answers, but with hearts stirred, eyes opened, and a thirst they could not name. She gave no sermons, led no armies, wrote no books, yet she redefined what it meant to worship. Through her, people learned that to know Allah is not just to obey Him, but to love Him so completely that obedience becomes breath. She was a mystic, yes, but not in the way the world expects. She did not perform tricks, did not boast of visions. Her only miracle was her heart, a heart so filled with Allah that it could not contain anything else. In the simplicity of her hut, the angels descended. In the solitude of her nights, the heavens listened. And in the small frame of this orphaned woman, the fire of eternal love blazed, guiding others to the only truth that matters, that in loving Allah purely, one finds everything. There are lives in which miracles arrive like thunder, loud, sudden, majestic. And then there are lives where the miraculous drips like dew onto rose petals, quiet and continuous, noticed only by those with awakened hearts. Rabia's life was of the second kind. Her every breath was a miracle, her every step a testament that the human soul, when purified, can reflect the light of the divine. She did not perform signs to astonish or gather followers. She rejected spectacle, But those who saw her, those who truly saw her, not with eyes but with hearts, recognized that this woman was touched by something far beyond the realm of the world. It was said that once, in the dead of night, a fire broke out in the home of a neighbor. The people rushed in panic, grabbing buckets and shouting for help. But Rabia, sitting in her courtyard, did not move. Her eyes remained lifted toward the heavens, her lips whispering prayers. When someone called to her, "Why do you not help?" "And the fire is spreading," she replied softly. "He who lit the fire can also extinguish it." And before the words fully left her lips, the flames died down on their own, leaving no harm. Those who witnessed it were left in awe, but to Rabia it was simply trust made visible. In her humility, she never claimed miracles. She saw them not as marks of spiritual status, but as traces of divine mercy. To her, the true miracle was not walking on water or flying through the air. It was to love Allah sincerely in a world that constantly called one to forget. One evening, she walked through the outskirts of Basra, her heart aching with longing. The sun was setting, casting an orange fire over the desert hills. She paused, raised her hands and whispered, "O Allah, the stars above praise you. The birds in their nests glorify you. Even the rocks beneath my feet sing your name. Shall I not burn with yearning until I meet you?" In that moment, a light descended upon her, unseen by all but the lovers of truth. It was not the light of the sun, nor the light of fire, but the light of nearness. Her heart, already broken open by longing, became like a polished mirror, reflecting divine presence without distortion. On another day, some people approached her home and found her weeping, her face in her hands. "Why do you cry, O Rabia?" they asked. "Has harm come to you?" She lifted her head, and her tears had carved silent rivers upon her cheeks. "No harm," she said, "only distance. I do not weep because he is absent. I weep because I am not yet consumed in his love." The veil of self still hangs in fragments. Those around her were silenced. For most, the idea of nearness to God was abstract, a belief. But for Rabia, it was as real as the air she breathed. And it was not enough for her to believe. She longed to dissolve. It was in the stillness of the night that her miracles became most known. Her nights were not spent in sleep, but in standing. While others lay in comfort, Rabia stood with her arms lifted, her tears falling onto the prayer mat. Hours passed as minutes. She would whisper to her Lord, "O Allah, my eyes are awake because of you. My heart is alive only in remembrance of you. If you turn me away, where shall I go?" There were nights when a radiant fragrance would drift from her hut, sweet and undefinable. Those passing by would pause, breathing in the scent of something not of this world. It was said by those closest to her that on certain nights, the angels descended not just to record her worship, but to listen in awe to her invocations, and Allah knows best. She had a habit of lighting 2 lamps at night, one for her worship and one for the company of angels. Yet there were times when she had no oil left, and the night threatened to steal her light. Still, she would continue in prayer, and it was seen by more than one that her lamp would glow without fuel. Her room filled with light, though no flame could be found. These were not illusions or fantasies. They were signs, whispers from the divine for those with eyes to see. One day, a man came to her, bringing food as a gift. "Rabia, you live without comfort. Please accept this." She looked at the food and said gently, "Do you give it for Allah's sake or mine?" He replied, "For Allah's sake." She said, "Then take it back. He who feeds me has not stopped. I need not accept from other than him." And with that, she returned to her prayer, her body thin, her face luminous. This was not arrogance. This was not pride. This was the faith of one who had tasted the provision that flows from unseen hands. She had fasted for days with no food, yet she never complained. She would smile softly and say, "I have a Lord who does not forget." And indeed he did not. On another occasion, Rabia fell ill. Her body weakened and her breath grew shallow. One of her companions came to sit by her and cried to see her in such pain. "Ask Allah for healing," she said. "You are loved by him. He will answer you." Rabia opened her eyes, heavy with exhaustion but burning with light. "I am ashamed to ask from the one I love," she said. "If this pain comes from him, then it is mercy. If it is a test, then I welcome it. My only dua is that he not turn his face away." And in the stillness that followed, a strange peace filled the room. Her illness did not vanish immediately, but neither did her tranquility waver. Her sickness became her worship, her weakness her offering. There came a day when Rabia was seen walking through the streets of Basra carrying a torch in one hand and a jug of water in the other. People gathered around, stunned. "What are you doing, O Rabia?" She replied, "With this torch I will burn the gardens of paradise, and with this water I will extinguish the fires of hell, so that none will worship Allah for fear or for reward, but only for love." Though the act was symbolic, the message shook the hearts of many. It was not disrespect she showed for heaven or hell, but rather a deeper truth. She wanted hearts to turn to Allah, not as traders of reward, but as lovers. Her words ignited a fire in the souls of those who heard. Scholars began to weep. Sinners found hope. Lovers found their path. Rabia did not isolate herself out of disdain for the world. She withdrew because her heart had found its direction. And those who sat in her presence knew that they sat not with a woman, but with a mirror reflecting divine light. Even the animals seemed to know her sanctity. Birds would perch on her shoulders without fear. A deer once approached her while she was praying, resting beside her feet until she completed her dhikr. She patted its head gently and whispered, "He who created us both knows our needs." In all these miracles, Rabia never sought fame. She would weep when people praised her, saying, "If only they knew my reality, they would throw stones instead of flowers." But it was precisely that humility which elevated her beyond those who claimed greatness. For she was not a knower of words, she was a knower of Allah. She once said, "I have not served Allah for any reward, but simply because He is worthy of service." Such a statement could only be made by one who had stripped away every veil, every ego, every ambition, and stood bare before her Lord. Years passed and Rabia aged. Her body became frail, but her soul shone ever brighter. It was said that her face glowed with a light that came not from the sun or moon, but from the flame of love that never dimmed. Those who visited her in old age said it was like sitting before a lamp lit by the hand of Allah Himself. She would look into the sky at night and whisper, "O my beloved, the stars bear witness that I am still waiting. My heart is still burning. My soul still calls for you." And somewhere beyond the veils, the beloved answered. Then let us walk with reverence into the valley of trials, the sacred landscape where the soul of Rabia al-Adawiyya was tested not with fire and sword, but with loneliness, rejection, poverty, and a longing so deep it could only be answered by the infinite. Here we find not the outer clash of warriors, but the inner jihad of the heart, the battle between attachment and surrender, between selfhood and divine annihilation. As her name began to spread beyond Basra, Rabia did not rejoice. While others might have basked in admiration or influence, she felt sorrowful. "My Lord," she whispered in the silence of her hut, "they praise what they do not see. Let them forget me, so that I may remember only you." But Allah, in His wisdom, had ordained for her a path where love would not come without pain, and nearness would not be given without the trial of separation. Her life was a crucible, and through it the purest gold of faith was drawn forth. She had once lived in chains as a slave. That was a trial of the body, but now she would face the trial of the soul, the ache of divine distance. And perhaps no suffering is harder to bear than when the lover feels far from the beloved. There were nights when even Rabia felt the silence stretch long. She would rise to pray, but her heart would not ignite. Her tongue would move, but tears would not come. These were the nights of spiritual dryness, the hidden trials of the saints. Her companions knew nothing of it, for she concealed her suffering like a secret wound. Once, she said in a whisper to her Lord, "My beloved, you are the light of my soul. Why then do you hide yourself from me?" And in the stillness that followed, she heard only silence. But even in that silence, she did not despair. Instead, she cried, "Even your silence is sweeter than the words of creation." That was the measure of her surrender. She did not seek consolation. She sought only Allah. Whether the sky poured rain or withheld it, she stood unmoved. Whether joy or sorrow came to her door, she saw both as messages from the same sender. One of her most painful trials came when a scholar of high esteem, a man well known in Basra, publicly questioned her position. "She is a woman," he said. To his disciples, "What can she know of spiritual truth? Let her fast and pray in silence, but do not raise her among the saints." The words reached Rabia, and though she felt no anger, the sting of dismissal pierced her heart, not for her own honor, but for the blindness that still clouded the hearts of those who thought knowledge resided only in books and titles. She fell into sujood, prostration, and whispered, "O Allah, do not let me be known. Hide me from the eyes of pride. But if you must lift me up, then make me a sign for your lovers, not for the arrogant." In time, the very scholar who had questioned her came to visit her. He entered her humble room, prepared to offer counsel. But when he sat before her, he found himself trembling. Rabia spoke no word. She simply looked at him, and her silence burned away every veil in his heart. He left her presence weeping. Later he said, "I entered as a teacher, I left as a student. That woman, no, that soul, is closer to Allah than I have ever been." But not all tests came from others. Some came from within. There were days when Rabia's body, already weakened by years of fasting and sleepless nights, began to fail her. Pain settled in her joints. Her steps grew slower, her breath shorter. A fever once left her nearly unconscious for days. And still, she refused to ask for healing. A friend who visited her cried out, "Why do you not pray for health?" Rabia replied softly, "If he desires that I be well, I accept. If he desires that I be broken, I accept. Shall I interfere with the will of the one I love?" This was not fatalism. It was complete trust. She saw illness not as punishment, but as purification. And if the fire burned, it was only to remove what remained of herself. Once, in a moment of exhaustion, she was found lying on the earth, her hands clasped on her chest. A disciple rushed to her aid, saying, "Do you need help?" She opened her eyes and whispered, "Help! I'm already being helped. The earth carries me, the sky covers me, the air enters my lungs. My Lord is near even if I fall. What more help do I need?" But the greatest trial of her life, the deepest wound of all, was not the lack of food or the pain of illness or the insults of those who misunderstood her. It was longing, not the simple desire to see or know, but a longing so vast it eclipsed everything else. She would stand at night and cry, "O Allah, my soul burns in separation. I see your signs, but I want you. I hear your name, but I want your face. I taste your mercy, but I thirst for your nearness." One night, she collapsed in prayer, unable to rise. Her knees gave way and her tears soaked the ground. And in that moment, a presence filled her hut. A warmth surrounded her. It was not a dream nor a vision. It was the certainty of divine. "Attention!" Her voice broke as she whispered, "Has the time come?" Will you draw me near? And in her heart she felt an answer, not in words, but in a knowing. Not yet, beloved. Your time is near, but not yet. There are still hearts to awaken through you. And so she rose, though her body protested. She smiled through her pain and continued her vigil, not for reward, but for love. Every hardship she transformed into worship, every sorrow into an offering. Yet one test remained. A wealthy man, struck by her beauty and renown, came to propose marriage. He sent a messenger with jewels and fine cloth. Rabia smiled at the messenger, took the cloth, and wiped the dust from her floor with it. "Tell him," she said gently, "that Rabia has already married her lord. I have no room in my heart for any other beloved." And when the man heard her reply, he wept. For in her rejection he found his own awakening. He sold his possessions, gave in charity, and sought the path of the dervishes. Such was the test of the world's temptations. And Rabia passed not by resisting, but by being already full of another love. The world could not enter her heart because it was already occupied by the one for whom she lived, breathed, and burned. Even the saints who visited her were tested by her purity. Hasan al-Basri, a giant of his time, once asked her, "Rabia, what is your station with Allah?" She replied, "You speak of stations and degrees, but I do not think of where I stand. I think only of where He is. Let me be a speck of dust under His throne, if only I do not forget Him for a single breath." And Hasan, a man of wisdom, bowed his head and said, "You are beyond what we men can reach." The trials continued until her last breath, but never did her faith waver. She said, "O Allah, if you test me, I will still praise you. If you give me joy, I will still long for you. And if you hide your face, I will still call out your name until the last breath leaves my body." This was Rabia, not a scholar of books, but a scholar of love, not a saint of miracles, but a saint of surrender. Her trials did not break her, they unveiled her. For through each wound a light poured forth, a light not of this world, but from the one she adored above all. Then listen closely now, dear soul. We have come to the summit of her journey, the climactic moment when Rabia al-Adawiyya, already emptied of herself, crossed the veil of earthly limitation and stood wholly in the realm of the unseen. In this sacred moment, we do not witness thunder or lightning, nor the clash of armies or the breaking of chains. Instead, we witness something far rarer, far holier, a soul becoming pure flame, dissolving into the light of the divine. The final years of Rabia's life were cloaked in silence and mystery, her body frail but her soul radiant with a light that seemed not of this world. Her hut, no larger than a shadow, became the throne room of a queen, though no gold touched her and no crown adorned her head. The only adornment she wore was hunger, the only perfume her tears, and the only audience she desired was the unseen gaze of her beloved. To the casual eye, she was a woman alone. To the eye of the heart, she was surrounded by angels, her every breath a verse, her every tear a prayer. One night, while the city of Basra lay sleeping under a velvet sky, Rabia stood in prayer as she had always done. Her body, frail as a reed, swayed in stillness. Her voice, like wind through the trees, trembled. "O Allah, the stars have shone, the eyes have closed, the kings have locked their doors, and every lover is alone with their beloved. But here I stand alone with you." And in that moment, the veil lifted. Her room became filled with an unseen brilliance. There were no flames, no apparitions, only a presence. The walls seemed to vanish, the ground no longer solid. All things worldly disappeared, and what remained was intimacy, nearness, union. It is said that in this moment her soul wept in joy. "Oh, my beloved," she whispered, "I have worshipped you, not from fear of hell nor hope of paradise, but because you are worthy of worship." If I burn, let it be by the fire of longing. If I rest, let it be in the shadow of your nearness. Then came a miracle, known only to the people of the heart. Those present outside her dwelling reported hearing nothing, yet the scent of musk began to drift from her room, sweet and thick, not of any earthly perfume. A disciple, sensing something divine, entered and saw Rabia collapsed in sujood, her head resting on the earth, her body trembling with stillness. He approached, and when he touched her shoulder, she turned her face toward him, her eyes shimmering with a light deeper than tears. "I have seen him," she whispered, "not with the eyes of the body, but with the eyes of the soul. And seeing him, I forgot everything else." Then she wept, not from sorrow, but from the unbearable beauty of what she had tasted. That night, she neither ate nor slept. She remained in prayer until dawn, and with the sunrise came something wondrous. Her hut, always cold and dim, glowed with warmth. The people who passed by paused, looking up to see light spilling from her windows, but there were no candles, no fire, only the radiance of a soul nearing completion. She had given away everything, clothing, coins, even her water. And now she prepared to give the last thing she possessed, her breath. In those final days, her body could no longer rise for prayer, but her heart never ceased its whispering, "Ya Allah, Ya Allah." A group of saints and seekers gathered to bid her farewell. Among them was Hasan al-Basri. He sat beside her and asked softly, "Rabia, is there anything we can do for you? Any last wish?" She smiled gently. "You cannot give me what I already have, and what I seek now none can give me but my Lord. But is there anything," he said, his voice trembling, "you fear as you approach your return?" Rabia's eyes, once weary, now shone like two stars. "No," she said, "for how can the one who has spent her life knocking at the door fear to enter when it opens?" And then she turned her gaze to the heavens. "O Allah," she said, "my eyes have never turned from you. My heart has never sought another. If you now take me not as one who deserves, but as one who loves." At that moment, a calm descended. The disciples reported that the wind outside grew still. Birds fell silent. Even the city's sounds faded, as though the earth itself held its breath. Then came her final words, "My work is complete, my soul is ready. Draw me into you, O light beyond all lights." And with a sigh so soft it could barely be heard, Rabia al-Adawiyya returned to the one for whom she had lived, wept, fasted, prayed, and burned. A dove that had been resting on her windowsill flew into the sky, circling above her hut 3 times, before disappearing into the sun. And those who were present later said, "We did not bury a woman, we buried a light." The news spread not through proclamation, but through silence. People arrived not with mourning, but with reverence. There was no wailing at her funeral, only awe. As her body was carried, the earth seemed to hush. A fragrance followed her bier, and many later said their hearts felt lightened, as though they had glimpsed something of the unseen. One man, a scholar who had once doubted her, wept by her grave. "I saw her once and did not recognize her," he said. "Now I see her never again, and I cannot forget her." It is said that the sky wept rain the next morning, soft and perfumed, and that the garden around her resting place bloomed early that year. But Rabia's true grave was not the earth. It was the hearts of the lovers she awakened. Her story did not end with death. It began anew in the souls of those who heard her prayers, tasted her devotion, and felt the heat of her longing. This was her final miracle, not a healing of bodies, not a lifting of burdens, but the awakening of hearts. She showed the world that one soul, ignited by love for Allah, could become a sun, and even after she was gone, her light remained, and so she passed, not as a servant seeking reward, nor a mystic seeking station, but as a lover returning home. She gave herself completely, and in that giving she gained eternity. For in the garden of the divine, love never dies. It only returns to its source. Then come closer now, dear seeker, and let us gaze into the garden Rabia al-Adawiyya left behind. Not one of roses or jasmine, but a garden of hearts, awakened, broken, healed, and set ablaze by her love for the divine. She was buried beneath the open sky, not far from Basra, in a quiet plot visited only by the wind and the occasional pilgrim. Yet her legacy did not lie in marble tombstones or grand mausoleums. Her legacy was written in the souls of those who loved, wept, and remembered her, not as a saint of legend, but as a mirror of longing, a beacon of divine love. In the days following her return to her beloved, something strange began to happen. Those who had known her felt her presence in their prayers. Some reported dreams in which she appeared, radiant and calm, whispering words of remembrance. Others said their hearts were moved to weep without reason. And when they searched within, they found her name carved softly in the chambers of their soul. Hasan al-Basri, once her peer, now wept like a child at the loss of his sister in spirit. I debated her with words, he said, but she conquered me with silence. I taught men with my sermons, but she taught hearts with her tears. Her hut was never rebuilt. It was left as it was, a cracked wall, a wooden threshold, and a mat on the ground. Yet it became a sacred place for those who journeyed in search of the beloved. Pilgrims would come and sit where she once sat, whispering the name she never ceased to call. They would press their heads against the ground where she had prayed, and many swore they felt warmth rise through the earth, as though her longing had soaked the soil. But Rabia's true garden was in the words that survived her. O Allah, if I worship you for fear of hell, burn me in hell. And if I worship you in hope of paradise, exclude me from paradise. But if I worship you for your own sake, then withhold not from me your eternal beauty. These words echoed across lands and centuries. They were passed from hand to hand, written in calligraphy, on the walls of mosques, whispered in the hearts of those on the path. Her simple phrases became rivers of meaning for the mystics and scholars of the ages. For what she had lived, they now sought to live. Her teachings inspired generations of Sufis. Saints like Junaid, Attar, and Rumi would draw upon her well of wisdom, their hearts echoing her cry for annihilation in the beloved. She had no school, no students in the formal sense, and yet she became a teacher for thousands. Her classroom, the human soul; her subject, the language of love. To women especially, she became a symbol of what could not be taken. Though she lived in a time of slavery, she transcended every chain. Her gender did not confine her. Her devotion freed her. She taught by example that the soul has no gender, only longing. In a world that measured value by power and wealth, she inverted every scale. She showed that the truest power was surrender, and the greatest wealth was nearness to the One. Her story proved that sainthood was not reserved for those in palaces or cloisters, but for any soul that chooses the beloved above all. Even the scholars who once doubted her could no longer deny her rank. A jurist once asked, "Why is this woman so highly spoken of when she neither led nor fought nor ruled?" An old man replied, "Because while kings ruled kingdoms, she ruled over her nafs, and that, my son, is the rarest kingdom of all." Generations passed, cities fell, empires rose, yet her name remained, whispered like a prayer. In dusty gatherings of dervishes beneath moonlit trees, her story would be told again and again, of the slave girl who became queen by surrendering everything for her one true king. And what of today? Even now, in distant lands and languages, her story is retold, A child in Morocco may hear of her and weep without understanding why. A seeker in Turkey may sit in a garden with her name on their lips. A scholar in Indonesia may quote her in a lecture. Her fragrance still drifts through the hearts of those who remember, carrying the same message that Allah is enough, that love is the highest form of worship, that true freedom lies in servanthood to the Most High. Perhaps the greatest miracle of Rabia's life is not in her visions or her prayers, but in this simple truth. She made us remember. She made us remember that the soul was made to burn for its beloved, that the body is a shell and the world a veil, and only through longing can one pass through. She taught us that tears are not weakness, but the water by which hearts are purified, and she reminded us that paradise is not only a garden to be entered after death, but a state of intimacy that can be tasted even now by those who seek only Him. And so, when you hear her name, Rabia al-Adawiyya, do not think of her merely as a historical figure or a mystic or a saint. Think of her as a mirror. Look into her life and see what your soul could become if it let go of everything but God. For in the end, Rabia left behind no treasure, no writings, no children, no home. But she left behind something far greater, a path of fire for the lovers of God, a path that leads always and only home. Then come, dear soul, let us rest here at the end of a sacred journey, not in silence, but in deep reflection. The life of Rabia al-Adawiyya was not merely a tale of devotion, it was a flame that consumed the veils between the lover and the beloved. She showed us that the greatest act of worship is not born of fear nor of hope, but of pure, unadulterated love. Hers was a life where each breath was dhikr, each tear a verse, each step a march toward annihilation in the divine. She began in chains and ended in celestial freedom. She owned nothing and yet was richer than kings. She lived among the forgotten, but her name is now remembered among the most honored. She never sought fame, but Allah gave her a legacy that outlasted empires. Such is the rank of the one who chooses God above all. Rabia's life is a mirror to us all. She did not speak of God from afar. She spoke to Him, with Him, for Him. She walked through pain, poverty, loss, and longing, not away from them, but into them until she emerged purified, radiant, and utterly surrendered. She did not just talk of divine love, she became it. And so we must ask ourselves, what do we seek? Is our worship rooted in transaction or in love? Do we chase the garden or the gardener? When trials come, do we run from Allah or into His arms? Her story is not just to be heard, it is to be lived. In a world of distraction, her voice calls us back to stillness. In an age of spiritual hunger, her legacy feeds the heart. She teaches us that even in obscurity, a soul can shine like a sun, that even in chains, the spirit can soar, that when all is stripped away, what remains is what truly matters, God. If her story moved something in your soul, if a single tear formed or a longing stirred in your chest, then carry it forward. Let her remembrance not end here. Walk in the path she illuminated. Speak to Allah with honesty. Love Him without condition. Lose yourself in Him, and in doing so find yourself entirely. And if you felt her presence in this story, then share it. Let others hear, let others remember, let others burn. Subscribe to this sacred space, like this video if her life touched yours, and share it with all who seek the path of love. In doing so, you become part of her legacy. In doing so, you awaken another heart. Rabia once said, "I am not afraid of fire nor in love with paradise. I only long for the one I love." May we all find that same longing. May our hearts be lit by her flame. May our lives echo her surrender. And may we one day be gathered among the lovers of Allah, where Rabia now dwells, forever at peace, forever in love. Ameen.